there is a painful truth that most people discover far too late. The more you sacrifice for some people, the less they respect you. You answer every call. You solve every problem. You make yourself available. You forgive. You understand. You give people chance after chance. Yet somehow they value you less, not more. Think about that. The friend who only contacts you when they need something. The coworker who always finds a way to dump work on your desk. The family member who treats your kindness like an obligation. The partner who slowly stopped appreciating everything you did. You gave more. They respected you less. You tried harder. They valued you less. You became more available. They became more demanding. And eventually, you started asking yourself a question millions of people secretly ask every day. Why? Why do nice people so often end up exhausted, used, ignored, disrespected? Because there is a lie, a very dangerous lie, that society teaches from childhood. A lie that sounds beautiful. A lie that feels moral. A lie that destroys lives. The lie is this: if you are kind enough, helpful enough, patient enough, and selfless enough, people will eventually respect you. But human nature doesn't work that way, and Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone. More than 500 years ago, he observed kings, generals, merchants, politicians, and ordinary people, and he discovered something uncomfortable. People do not automatically respect kindness. They respect value. They respect boundaries. They respect strength. And when kindness exists without those things, it often gets mistaken for weakness. That sentence explains thousands of broken relationships, thousands of toxic friendships, thousands of careers that never progressed. Because the problem is usually not that you are too kind. The problem is that people have learned there is no cost to taking advantage of you. Pay very close attention here, because this might be the most important idea in today's video. Every relationship operates according to invisible rules. Rules nobody talks about. Rules nobody writes down. Rules people learn through your behavior. Not your words, your behavior. You can tell people to respect you. You can ask people to appreciate you. You can explain your feelings for hours. It doesn't matter. People watch what you tolerate, and once they learn what you tolerate, they adjust accordingly. This is why the nicest person in the office often gets the most work dumped on them. This is why the most generous friend often feels the least appreciated. This is why the person who avoids conflict usually carries everyone else's burdens. Because human beings constantly test limits. Children do it. Coworkers do it. Friends do it. Partners do it. Everyone does it. We push. We observe. We learn where the boundary exists. And if there is no boundary, the pushing continues. Not because people are evil, because human nature follows incentives. Now here is where things become dangerous. Most nice people don't realize they are teaching people how to treat them. Every time you say yes, when you desperately want to say no, you teach people your needs come second. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you teach people disrespect is acceptable. Every time you sacrifice your own well-being to avoid disappointing someone else, you teach people your limits don't matter. And over time, something invisible happens. People stop seeing your kindness as generosity. They begin seeing it as availability, unlimited availability, and anything unlimited eventually loses value. Think about air, you rarely notice it, until it's gone. Think about water, you barely think about it, until you can't access it. Scarcity creates value. Unlimited access destroys it. The exact same principle applies to human relationships. And this leads directly to the first trap that destroys respect. A trap so common that millions of people mistake it for kindness. But it isn't kindness, it's fear. Fear of disappointing people, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being liked. And once people sense that fear, the balance of power begins to change. Because the moment someone realizes you need their approval, they stop respecting you the same way. And what happens next is the reason so many good people spend their entire lives feeling invisible. In the next part, we'll expose what Machiavelli understood about approval, validation, and why the need to be liked quietly destroys respect. Most people think they want respect, but if you watch their behavior carefully, you discover something very different. They want approval. And that difference changes everything. Approval feels good. Respect changes your life. Approval is emotional. Respect is structural. Approval is given. Respect is earned. And the tragedy is that many people spend their entire lives chasing one while quietly losing the other. Think about the people who constantly need reassurance. The people who apologize for everything. The people who cannot say no. The people who explain every decision. The people who become anxious whenever someone is upset with them. At first it looks like kindness, but underneath that kindness there is often fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing others, fear of being disliked. And human beings are surprisingly good at detecting fear, even when nobody says a word. This is where the psychological shift begins. The moment people realize that your emotional well-being depends on their approval, the balance of power changes. Because now they know something important. They know you need something from them, and the person who needs less usually has more power. Read that again. The person who needs less usually has more power. This principle appears everywhere. In relationships, in friendships, in business, in negotiations, in everyday life. The employee who desperately needs the job accepts conditions they shouldn't. The employee who has options negotiates confidently. The friend who fears abandonment tolerates disrespect. The friend who values themselves walks away. The partner who constantly seeks reassurance creates anxiety. The partner who remains emotionally grounded creates attraction. Why? Because neediness changes perception. Neediness signals dependence, and dependence weakens position. Machiavelli observed this centuries ago. A ruler who depends entirely on public affection becomes vulnerable to public opinion. Because affection changes, crowds change, support disappears. The same principle applies to your life. Most people build their confidence on borrowed approval. Someone praises them, they feel powerful. Someone criticizes them, they feel broken. Someone includes them, they feel worthy. Someone excludes them, they feel worthless. Notice the problem. Their emotional state belongs to other people. Their confidence is rented, not owned. And rented confidence always comes with a cost. Because sooner or later, the world stops paying. This is why some people stay trapped in toxic relationships for years. Not because they enjoy suffering, because they fear losing approval. This is why some people remain in jobs that destroy their spirit, because they fear disapproval. This is why some people never become who they were meant to be, because they spend their entire lives trying to avoid disappointing everyone else. But pay very close attention here. This is where everything changes. Machiavelli was not teaching people to become cold. He was teaching people to become independent. There is a huge difference. Cold people stop caring. Independent people stop begging. Cold people push everyone away. Independent people stop chasing validation. Cold people isolate themselves. Independent people free themselves. One creates loneliness. The other creates strength, and the strongest people you know eventually learn this lesson. At some point, they stop explaining every decision. They stop seeking permission. They stop asking everyone to understand. They stop negotiating their worth. And something surprising happens. People begin respecting them more. Not because they became cruel, not because they became arrogant, because they became certain. Confidence grows when you stop asking strangers to approve of your existence. And confidence is one of the most respected traits on earth. But confidence creates a new challenge, because once you stop seeking approval, you start disappointing people. You say no, you create boundaries, you become unavailable, you stop fixing everyone's problems. And suddenly, the people who benefited from your endless generosity start reacting differently. Some become angry. Some become distant. Some become offended. And those reactions reveal something most people never see. Because the moment you create boundaries, people show you who they really are. And in the next part, you'll discover why some people become furious the moment you stop being easy to use. Because their reaction reveals exactly how they viewed you all along. There is a moment that changes everything. A moment that reveals the truth about almost every relationship in your life. It happens the first time you say no. Not aggressively, not rudely, not emotionally, just no, and suddenly people change. The coworker becomes irritated. The friend becomes distant. The family member becomes offended. The partner becomes defensive. The same people who benefited from your kindness for years suddenly act as if you've done something wrong. Why? Because boundaries reveal motives, and motives are easy to hide when someone never says no. Think about it. If you always agree, always help, always sacrifice, always make yourself available, nobody ever has to reveal their true intentions. Everyone gets what they want. But the moment a boundary appears, the truth comes out. Because boundaries force people to make a choice, respect you, or lose access to what you provide, and some people hate that choice. This is one of the most painful lessons in human nature. Not everyone loves you. Some people love what you do for them. There is a difference. A massive difference. Real respect survives boundaries. Exploitation doesn't. Pay close attention here. The people who become angry when you establish healthy boundaries are often the same people who benefited most from the absence of them. Let that sink in. When you stop answering every late-night request, when you stop fixing everyone's problems, when you stop sacrificing your peace to protect theirs, you discover who valued you and who simply valued your usefulness. And that realization hurts, because most people don't want to believe it. They want to believe their loyalty was appreciated, their sacrifices were noticed, their patience was valued. Sometimes it was, but sometimes it was simply expected. This is why so many nice people become resentful. They spend years giving without realizing they are teaching people to take. And then one day, they finally create a boundary, and everyone acts surprised. But the truth is, the boundary wasn't the problem. The problem was that people got comfortable benefiting from your lack of one. This is where most people make a mistake. Someone gets upset. Someone pulls away. Someone becomes cold. And immediately they panic. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should apologize. Maybe I should go back to how things were. But what if the discomfort you're feeling isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong? What if it's evidence that you're finally doing something right? Because growth often feels selfish to people who benefited from your self-neglect. And once you understand that, you stop feeling guilty for protecting your time, your energy, and your peace. But there is still one habit that destroys respect more than almost anything else. A habit millions of people do every day without realizing it. And once you see it, you'll never look at human behavior the same way again. It's called over-explaining. And that's where Machiavelli's most powerful lesson begins. Think about the last time someone questioned your decision. Maybe you declined an invitation. Maybe you set a boundary. Maybe you refused a request. Maybe you simply chose a different path. What was your first instinct? To explain, to justify, to defend, to make sure they understood. And before you know it, a simple answer becomes a 5-minute speech. A simple decision becomes a courtroom trial. A simple boundary becomes a negotiation. Most people think explanations create understanding, but excessive explanations create something else. Doubt. Because every unnecessary explanation communicates a hidden message. It says, "I'm not fully confident in my decision." And people feel that, even when they can't explain why. Imagine two people saying no. The first says, "No, I won't be able to do that." Then stops talking. The second says, "No, I'm sorry, it's just that I've been really busy lately, and there are a lot of things happening, and I don't want you to think I'm rude." Notice the difference. The first person communicates certainty. The second person seeks permission, and human beings instinctively respect certainty. Machiavelli understood this hundreds of years ago. The strongest position is rarely the one with the longest explanation. It's usually the one with the strongest conviction, because confidence creates influence. Doubt invites challenge. This is why people often argue more with nice people, not because they disagree, because they sense uncertainty. And uncertainty makes people think your decision is negotiable. The more you explain, the more openings you create. The more you justify, the more people feel entitled to debate. The more desperately you try to convince people, the less convincing you become. This doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means understanding something most people never learn. Not every decision requires a defense. Not every boundary requires an explanation. Not every choice requires approval. And not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Powerful people understand this. They explain when they choose to, not because they feel obligated to. That difference changes everything. Because the moment you stop defending your existence, your confidence begins to grow, and confidence creates respect. But there is one final lesson. The lesson that separates people who spend their lives chasing respect from the people who naturally command it. Because respect was never something you could ask for. It was something you taught people to give. And that lesson starts with how you treat yourself. There is one final truth that explains everything you've heard today. People rarely respect you more than you respect yourself. Think about that. The way you treat yourself becomes the instruction manual others use. If you constantly tolerate disrespect, people learn disrespect is acceptable. If you constantly abandon your own needs, people learn your needs don't matter. If you constantly seek approval, people learn your confidence depends on them. And if your confidence depends on them, your power belongs to them. This is why so many nice people feel invisible. Not because they lack value, because they spend their lives trying to convince others of their value. Machiavelli understood something most people never do. Power begins with perception, and perception begins with behavior. People don't judge you by your intentions. They judge you by your standards. The standards you tolerate. The standards you enforce. The standards you live by. That is why some people walk into a room and immediately command respect. Not because they are louder, not because they are richer, not because they are more talented, because they carry themselves as if their time, their energy, and their attention have value, and the world responds accordingly. Now understand this. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is not to become selfish. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself. There is a difference. You can be kind without being weak. You can be generous without being used. You can be compassionate without becoming someone's victim. That is the balance most people never find, because they believe they must choose nice or respected, kind or strong, compassionate or powerful. But the strongest people are often the kindest people in the room. The difference is that their kindness has boundaries, their generosity has standards, and their self-respect is non-negotiable. That is why they are respected, not feared, not worshipped, respected, because they taught people how to treat them. And that lesson started with how they treated themselves. So if you remember one thing from this video, remember this. The problem was never that you were too nice. The problem was believing that kindness required self-sacrifice. It doesn't. Real strength is not becoming harder. Real strength is refusing to betray yourself. And once you learn that, everything changes. The way people see you changes. The way you see yourself changes. The way you move through life changes. Because the moment you stop chasing respect and start living as someone worthy of it, respect often follows naturally. Not from everyone. Some people will leave. Some people will become uncomfortable. Some people will resist the new version of you. Let them. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries were never your reward. Your peace is. Your confidence is. Your self-respect is. And those things are worth protecting. So tell me in the comments, what is one boundary you should have set years ago, but didn't? And if this video helped you see yourself differently, subscribe to Silent Power, because the next lesson may be the one that changes everything. Remember, the strongest people are not the ones who control others. They are the ones who finally learn to control themselves.